What's up, everyone? My name is Ethan. Welcome to Splash City. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and let's get into it. So today, we are continuing our off-season breakdown series with a look at the Sacramento Kings, who have the current longest active playoff drought in the entire NBA. It's also, I believe, tied for the longest in the history of the NBA. What, 14, 15, 16 seasons? Something like that. I don't even know the number. It's been a long time. That's the point. And so, we're going to take a look at what the Kings can do to get back into the postseason, because that's been their goal for a very long time, and they have not been successful at it. So this is a big offseason for them. They got a couple of big decisions to make, and we'll see how they go. So let's take a look at the Kings. Just a reminder to everybody that I am out of town this week, so all these videos are pre-recorded. I'm trying my best to make sure that everything is still relevant to you, but as we know, things change quickly in the NBA, so if any of this information is not, accurate as of the time of this being uploaded, this was recorded on June 11th, so this is about a week before this one is actually uploaded, yeah, that's all I have, and let's get on with the video. So the Kings, it feels like they kind of just keep ramming their head into the wall. It's been a couple of years now where they've been like right on the edge of the playoffs and now right on the edge of the play-in tournament for the last 2 seasons. Just kind of like right there, but not quite good enough to make it in. So, what can they do to really shake up this roster? Because it's pretty clear where this team stands right now. They're like fine, a little bit below average, not quite bad enough to have a super high draft pick, obviously not good enough to get into the postseason. So they're like fine, right? What can they do to really get over the hump here? Well, they might have to make some moves because they have a couple of these big contracts, which I'll get to in a second. But Buddy Hield, Harrison Barnes, DeLon Wright, Marvin Bagley, all those guys could potentially be on the trading block. See what you can get back for them. And then also continuing to draft well, hoping that you can, hit a home run and continue to build through the draft, because it's not a free agent destination, not only because of the location, because Sacramento is, if you're going to California, there are 3 teams you would rather play for before you would play for Sacramento. And then also just the fact that they haven't been good in so long, the organization has lacked the competency for a very long time. And so, not very many free agents are going to want to go there. So you're going to try as hard as you can to build through the draft and through trades. So we'll see what they can do, but this is going to be a pivotal offseason for them because it feels like they're reaching a boiling point of frustration. I know that they recently changed over the front office, but they've kept Luke Walton and his coaching staff for whatever reason, and so it's kind of going to reach a boiling point, I think, this next season, where if things don't start to turn around quickly, you're going to see probably Luke Walton get fired, halfway through the year, and potentially some big trades come into this organization. So here's the cap sheet for them. Like I mentioned, they have a couple of these big contracts to trade. Buddy Hield, Harrison Barnes, DeLon Wright, Marvin Bagley, those 4 there at the top, are all potentially going to be on the trade block. Hield and Barnes were both in rumors around the deadline. I know Buddy Hield was heavily in rumors last offseason, and he ended up not getting moved. Who knows who is interested out there. There might have been a couple of teams, but that's a pretty big number. Even though Buddy Hield is like, a solid player, he's a solid starter, but at around $20 million a season, it's a little bit too much for, some contenders to be able to take the risk on that. But maybe as that inches closer to expiring, they could potentially try to find a buyer, because after this year, there's only 3 more left. So we'll see if Buddy Hield ends up getting traded. Harrison Barnes is in a similar boat. He's okay. He's a pretty good player, but he's nothing exceptional. If you can get something back for him, that would be kind of cool. But, he's got 2 seasons left on his deal now. So Harrison Barnes, Buddy Hield, both those guys in a very similar situation. They're like okay players, but nothing great. And we'll see if the Kings can get anything back on those bigger contracts. Or they might just hold on to him into next season and beyond, just because they're like, again, solid players. They keep you on the bubble of the playoffs, but not anything that's really going to give you some championship upside. DeLon Wright's an intriguing one for sure. He's on an expiring deal at $8.5 million. They traded for him at the deadline this past year. DeLon Wright's a guy that I like. He went to Utah. That's my school that I currently attend, so I'm a fan of DeLon because he played for my college, of course, and I cheered for him back in those days. And so, I would like to see him move to maybe a contender. I think he could be a nice backup point guard, backup or 3rd string point guard on a really good team. I think he can bring some of that, defensive grit and toughness and the passing ability and things that are necessary to be a good point guard in this league, obviously. So DeLon Wright's a guy I would like to see get moved. I think they could get, a couple of, maybe a couple 2nd-round picks back for him, or maybe a younger player. But I think there's some contenders out there that would be interested in DeLon Wright if the Kings were to make him available, especially on that expiring contract. So we'll see if anything happens there. Marvin Bagley III. Who knows with Marvin Bagley, man? You know, he's been injured a lot. You can blame a lot of his early career struggles on those injuries, and he's up for an extension this offseason. They can choose to extend him if they want to because, you know, he's entering that final year of his rookie deal. We'll see. You know, I doubt they extend him. Honestly, I think it's more likely that they trade him than that they extend him. You know, any team out there that might be willing to take a shot on Bagley, I have no idea. You know, there's a couple younger teams throughout the league that would maybe be willing to take a look there, try to rehab him a little bit, hopefully that he stays healthy, and try to get him in there and playing well. So Bagley could be a guy that you trade. Who knows how much value he has? Unfortunately, for a former number 2 overall pick, his value has really gone down given the struggles that he's had so far in his career. But Bagley's a guy who I could see getting moved, and I doubt they extend him, to be honest. And so that $11 million salary could potentially be thrown into a trade if you're, you know, trading for somebody else making a similar amount of money. De'Aaron Fox's extension kicks in this year, bringing his total to $28 million a season, up from around $8 million. So they're going to be right up against the cap with that. They're paying him, Buddy Hield, Harrison Barnes, all those guys that I had talked about before, all those big contracts on the books. Going to bring them right up against the cap. They might have a little bit of money to work with this offseason, but not a ton there with Fox's extension kicking in. Especially if you re-sign the next guy, Richaun Holmes is going to be a free agent. He could eat up a lot of that cap space. I could see him getting paid, you know, $12 to $15 million a season. He's one of those guys who, you know, athletic center, run, jump, and dunk type guy, can really get in there and provide some energy for you. I like Richaun Holmes a lot. I think he's made a lot of improvements over the course of his career, and I could see the Kings wanting to bring him back. He's been a big part of their team over the past couple of seasons. So Richaun Holmes is a guy who I like, and I think the Kings should try to bring him back, and I think it would be honestly worth it, around 12-15 per season. A lot of people might see that as an overpay, but I think Richaun Holmes is a really nice player. Tyrese Haliburton is obviously one of the cornerstones of this franchise at this point. He was a home run pick, one of the few home run picks for the Kings over the last decade. Him and De'Aaron Fox are the core of this team. That's their starting backcourt for the next 15 years, hopefully. And Haliburton should be around to be able to stick around for a long time. So, you know, he's still on his rookie deal. You got to try to put a team around him while you got him on that cheap money. But he was, I believe, a finalist for Rookie of the Year this season, and he was really, really good. So Haliburton's a guy. Him and Fox, I think, are the only two that you would consider untouchable on this team. Everybody else can probably go. Maurice Harkless, Hassan Whiteside, both free agents. It doesn't really matter a ton. I would have liked to see them potentially try to get some value out of Whiteside at the deadline, but he's just not good enough. I really don't think Hassan Whiteside's a good NBA player. Would not be surprised to see him out of the league at, you know, this offseason. I don't know if any team out there would be willing to give him another shot. He wasn't very good with the Kings this year. He didn't play much at all. You know, his minutes per game were way down, and he just did not look super good. Got a bunch of DNP coaches' decisions. So Whiteside, I wouldn't bring back. It's just not worth it at this point. He's well past his NBA career. Maurice Harkless is another guy who, you know, is okay. I can see them maybe wanting to bring him back. He actually played all right for them after they brought him in at the deadline. But he's, you know, he's fine. I could see him fitting in on a contender somewhere else. Kings are not that, so they don't necessarily need him back. Terrence Davis will be a restricted free agent this summer. He was brought in that trade from the Raptors at the trade deadline there. And he, you know, as a restricted free agent, I could see him getting paid a little bit, but again, his value has sort of gone down. He had a nice rookie season with Toronto, but obviously that was a reason they were willing to part with him for just a second-round pick at that deadline there. So he's like okay. I don't know if the Kings want to bring him back. I mean, they did trade for him, so maybe they'll extend him here, but I wouldn't go too crazy over Terrence Davis either way. Justin James is non-guaranteed. He was all right. He's only 24, but if you really need the roster spot for somebody else, he might be one of the first ones to go. Moving on down there, Chimezie Metu, Damian Jones, both on those non-guaranteed deals as well. I think both of them did enough to be able to be brought back here. We'll see what they do with that center rotation, because, you know, with Bagley still on the team, as well as Richaun Holmes hopefully coming back for them, and then you have Metu and Jones also at that center spot. That might be too many big guys to carry on the roster, so maybe one of the two could end up getting cut, but I think both of them were solid for him. I liked Metu back when he was on the Spurs. I thought he was a solid prospect coming out of college, and he, you know, showed some improvement this year with an expanded role with the Kings. Damian Jones also brought in late in the season on a couple of 10-day deals and then signed for the rest of the season deal. He will be non-guaranteed next season, so we'll see if either of those guys end up sticking around, but I would not be surprised to see both of them back, considering that I think they're both okay prospects, still younger, and cheap at the center position. And then Kyle Guy down there on that two-way deal as well. I think he could potentially be brought up to a full NBA contract. I think he did enough this year, and he's, you know, only 23, so I could definitely see them promoting him, signing him to a full NBA deal, and then filling those two ways with some other younger prospects. And then as far as, needs for them in the offseason, I think they could use just depth at every position. I mean, you could maybe use another power forward, if you're moving on from Bagley, or if you want to move Bagley to a bench role. You could potentially put in, another 4 or 5 stretch big in there. I could see them, going out for that. You don't really have a need at the guard position with Fox and Haliburton. They're healthy. I would maybe be interested in seeing if Buddy Hield would be willing to come off the bench next year. I just looked at his stats. He started every single game he played in for the Kings this past season. The year before, he did come off the bench for about half of the games that he played in. So he has come off the bench in the past. He kind of got switched around with Bogdanovich before, obviously, he left for the Hawks. So we'll see if they can, potentially try to slide Haliburton in there at the 2 and start him alongside Fox rather than having Buddy Hield in there, or maybe even start all 3 of them along with Harrison Barnes and then whoever you have at center, whether that's Richaun Holmes coming back or somebody else. So I don't know exactly what the starting lineup's going to look like, but I think they just need depth everywhere. Like I said, maybe a stretch big in there to kind of, take some pressure off some of their other guys. Just depth at the wing positions as well. I think they're pretty okay on guard if they're holding on to DeLon Wright and some of these other guys. So we'll see how this goes, but yeah, they just need depth really. And they've got the 9th best lottery odds, so it's about a 46% chance to get the 9th overall pick, 29% chance to get that 10th pick, and then it's about a 20% to get one of the top 4. So 20% chance to jump into the top 4 for Sacramento. That's pretty solid lottery odds. You can potentially add another high-level prospect here. Even if you stay at 9 or 10 or lower than that, they had pretty, they drafted well getting Haliburton at that 12th spot last year, so maybe something similar can happen for them, getting another talented prospect in the late lottery. But jumping up into the top 4, allows them to add a really high-level prospect. I had, selected them as one of my favorite destinations for Cade Cunningham, to be honest with you. A lot of people might disagree with that given the organizational dysfunction, but just based on what they have on the floor, I think he would be a great fit next to Fox and Haliburton. Just having those 3 together at that 1, 2, 3 position, I think that would be really, really great and fun to watch. So if they get the first overall pick, I wouldn't be mad because I'd like to see Cade Cunningham with this team. Even Evan Mobley, I think, could fill that hole at center. Obviously, get the 2nd overall pick, bring Mobley in there. Regardless of whether or not Richaun Holmes is coming back, you can just plug him in. Either bring one of the 2 off the bench and, ease Mobley into that starting role over time. Whether it's Kuminga or Green or Jalen Suggs, any of those guys I think would work as well. Maybe not Suggs, considering that they have the 2 young guards. You might not want to throw him in there as well because that's a pretty small lineup there if you're planning on starting all 3 of them. But I think Jalen Green could work. Kuminga, I think, would be fine. So if you jump into the top 4, you have your pick of any of those prospects. That's a pretty good shot. But again, it's only 20%, so we'll see how things go for them in the lottery. But even if you land at 9 or 10, still a pretty good shot at adding a high-level prospect because this draft is a pretty solid class. So yeah, I think this is the last straw for Luke Walton this season. I mean, we've said this for multiple years. There's been like 2 seasons where he has been, we felt like he was going to get fired and it just hasn't happened. It's pretty clear to me that he is not the right fit for this group long term, as I think it is to most NBA fans and probably all the Kings fans out there. Want to see Luke Walton gone, but we do have reports that he'll be retained through this offseason and he has not been fired. So we'll see, how he does this season, but I could definitely see them moving on if things don't go well, going up to the deadline, a couple months, couple weeks into the season. If he's not performing well and the team is not performing well, I think we could see them moving on from him at some point during the regular season next year, or at the very least next offseason if they fail to make the playoffs again, because it's just getting to the point where, it's not going to, this just can't continue. As far as the front office goes, I think this was the first season or maybe the 2nd year with their new front office, so there's not going to be any changes there. They're going to give them some time to really work this out. But I could definitely see them making some big trades, potentially Buddy Hield, Harrison Barnes, Marvin Bagley. Any of those guys could realistically be moved this offseason. We'll see, how willing they are to shake things up. But I do think this team needs a sort of restructuring. Just hold on to Tyrese, Haliburton, and De'Aaron Fox and draft somebody this year, and that's going to be your core moving forward. Other than that, everybody else can go. And yeah, that's about all I have on the Sacramento Kings. Like I said at the top of the video, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, ring the bell if you want to, leave a comment letting me know what you guys think about the Kings, what should they do this offseason, who should they target in the draft and free agency, and which of their guys should they bring back. Would love to hear your thoughts down below. But with all that said, I'll see you guys in the next one.